Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 344 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week on the podcast, we've shaken things up a bit. As some listeners may know, I embarked on a 35-day hike on the Colorado Trail earlier this summer with my camera in tow. Upon my return, I had so many amazing questions from friends, family, and podcast listeners that we decided to do a podcast all about my adventure. I partnered with former guest Brie Stockwell, who graciously agreed to play host this week. She collected all of the questions from listeners and compiled them into a massive list. This week, we answer all of your burning questions about my experience hiking the Colorado Trail. Over and over again, people had questions about gear for my trip, so I decided to create a huge article all about my gear recommendations, which we will link to in the show notes. I hope you enjoy the chat, and thank you for all of your incredible questions. Okay, let's get to this week's episode with, well, Brie Stockwell and me.
Hey, Matt. Welcome to your podcast.
Thanks, Brie. I'm happy to be here. It's always fun being on this side of the microphone.
Is it, though? You look slightly uncomfortable knowing that we're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
Yeah, and then you told me there's like a bunch of secret questions that I don't know about. So
there are a few secret questions, yes. Okay, so a little introduction, everyone. So first, personally, Matt, I'm so crazy impressed by so many things that you've accomplished. I remember years ago when I first heard of your podcast, I'm like, he's hiked 100 of the highest peaks in Colorado. You've done a book. You've done all kinds of stuff. You've never even missed a week of this podcast, which I think is completely incredible. So
yeah, I must be a masochist, I guess.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's funny. That's actually one of the things people are always like, how do you do so much stuff? I'm like, how do you not? Like, I'm just always busy. That's just my personality. I'm constantly going.
Yes. Even now you're like, how long do I have to stand here? No, I'm just kidding.
No, this is fun. This is fun. Yeah, it's fun.
And so just by way of introduction, so Matt did, we'll let him talk about it, but Matt did a 35-day hike through the Colorado Trail, and he had a lot of questions that people kept asking, and he thought, why not just do a podcast on it, and I can have someone ask me the questions. And so here I am.
Here you are.
To do it. That's right.
Yeah, Brie Stockwell, which you've got your own podcast now too, so I'm like, hey, why not have someone else who also knows how to do podcasts do the interviewing?
That's right. We even found we have matching microphone setups, which is really fun.
It is fun. I think you copied me. It's fine.
It's fine. All right. So I also wanted to say, Matt, your audience is pretty amazing because I think I asked for questions and you asked for questions in multiple places, and people have really taken some time to ask some pretty interesting questions, and I'm really impressed. So this is going to be really awesome. By the way, so everyone knows, Matt, I think you barely peaked, like you got them when they were coming in, but he really hasn't looked at any of these. So all of the answers are just going to be like off the cuff, what comes to him. So I'm excited by this.
Yeah, it's you get a glimpse into how badly I am on this side of the microphone.
Oh, it's going to be the same. So should we get into it? Why don't you start, Matt, by giving us a little bit of an overview, like what made you want to do this? And then if you tell us what I'll try and do is if you answer any questions, I'll just skip over those. So we don't have doubles. So
sure.
Go for it.
So I live in Colorado, and I am pretty obsessed with the state of Colorado. I've lived here almost my entire life. I'm a fifth generation native of Colorado, and I just love it here. I think it's probably, in my opinion, the most amazing place in North America. I know Eric Bennett will tell you it's Utah. I think Utah's pretty awesome too, but I have a lot of love for Colorado. So the Colorado Trail is a 491 mile hike that starts in Denver and ends in Durango, where I live. So I was like, wouldn't that be cool to hike all the way home from Denver to my house across all of the mountains in between? And so I've always wanted to do the Colorado Trail, and I specifically chose not to do it in sections. I wanted to do it in one long just journey because I felt like it could be a very transformative experience. And of course, as a photographer, it's just an amazing opportunity to visit lots and lots of locations that I might not otherwise seek out without going on the trail specifically. So I looked at it as kind of like a physical challenge, a mental challenge, and a photography challenge. As a lot of listeners have probably heard, I've got this amazing opportunity this year where I was able to finally quit my full-time job working in the nonprofit sector, and I'm teaching for Munch workshops full-time. But in between there, I had a nice gap of time where I had about 7 weeks of just no work. And I figured, man, what could I do with 7 weeks of not having to go to work and not having to teach workshops and just having time to do something else that requires a huge chunk of time? And I immediately thought of doing the Colorado Trail. And so that was literally, I started thinking about it back in April. And then once I got the buy-in from my wife to do it, then it was like full on research mode. And so that's the gist of it. The standard, there's, I don't know, a couple other things to tell you about the Colorado Trail. 500 miles ish. There's 2 different routes. You can either go the Collegiate West or the Collegiate East. Basically about halfway through the trail, it splits and then it meets back up again at the southern end of the Collegiate Range, which is like a bunch of big 14ers are in there. So you either go around them or you go in front of them. And I chose the harder route to go around them, which takes you up into much higher elevation, more interesting vantage points, more elevation gain required. And so I, of course, just chose the hard way, and I don't regret that at all. And then from there, it takes you kind of southwest through some cattle country and down into the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, where I live. So that's kind of how the trail itself, that's the gist of it. A lot of people are familiar with through hiking, but basically you carry everything you need to get from one place, point A to point B, and that's, however long it takes. And some people do it really fast and some people do it really slow. There you go.
Awesome. My nephew also lives near Denver, and he hiked. He did that this summer, actually.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. Like July-ish. I don't know how many days it took him, though. I feel like, so this is not on the questions, but you said some people do it fast and some people do it slow. So what would be fast and what would be slow?
I think I'd have to look it up, but there's like people that they set records. It's called like the FKT, or fastest known time. So I think for the Colorado Trail, for a man, the fastest known time is something ridiculous, like 8 days or something. It's really insane. And I think there's like about 100,000 feet of elevation gain for the whole trail. So it's not flat either. So, but I would say really fast, like normal human speed would be 14 days, and really slow would be like 45 days. And I did it in 35 days. So, but I also climbed 20 mountains on the way. So I did a lot of extra credit projects.
I love that you called it extra credit.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So let's get into it, all right. These questions. So we got a lot of questions about your prep work, like your planning. And actually, you sent me your like itinerary, which I could not find. I could not access it. Maybe you deleted it. I don't know.
No, I actually I had to redo it because I made an Excel error and it actually really screwed up my entire trip. But it's okay. It worked out. But yeah, a friend of mine did the Colorado Trail back in 2017, and he was kind enough to share his spreadsheet with me just to kind of give me a general idea. And my whole reason for even having an itinerary wasn't because I'm anal or like obsessed with planning. It's mostly just to figure out how much food I needed and when I needed it. That was the main reason for kind of thinking through the whole trip, because without food you die. So so that was the whole reason for it. But yeah, I had a huge spreadsheet where I had, how many miles a day, approximately how many cumulative miles, elevation gain in those sections, how many days left of food would I have at that point.
Where the water stops were, I think you had on there.
Sometimes, like if there's sections of the trail where there's not much water, so you kind of have to be mindful of that going into it. Kind of a little bit of planning ahead can help you save from having some really bad days on trail where you have no water and things like that. So it was mostly just from a practical perspective. That is why I created that spreadsheet.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great idea. And also, you shared with me a while ago your gear sheet, which I looked over and I'm like, I'm impressed with this. Because, so y'all, Matt has this whole sheet, this is what I brought. It didn't have, on that one, it didn't have like food and water weight and stuff like that. But then he's got all of these other tabs that lists all his gear. So all he has to do is go through the sheet where you're like, it's like pick it. Is this how it went, Matt? That you could just pick the thing and put it in your like bag that you're taking. So anytime you do it, like a backpacking trip, you just pull the piece of gear that you have and stuff it in that sheet. And then it calculates all of the weight for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically a lot of it is gear that I either own or was looking to buy. So if it's something I thought was an upgrade or like different types of water containers or, lenses or, whatever it is, I would have them in the spreadsheet in its kind of the tab that it belongs to. And then I would put in the weight of that item in there. And then the first tab of the spreadsheet, it's all based on a VLOOKUP in Excel. So once you pick the drop down, it would pull that item and its weight over into that cell, and then it all cascades down into the weight of that area and then the full weight of the entire pack. So it was a nice way for me to kind of compare different items that, had different weights and make decisions of whether or not I left it at home or, oh my God, that weighs a lot. Is there something out there that weighs a little bit less that would be better for me to get? So, I spent a lot of time adding things to that spreadsheet that I didn't own yet that I was thinking about owning, and I just use that as like, okay, how low can I get my weight without selling my kidneys, basically.
Awesome. I thought it was really organized. So I think the key, it looks to me like, I guess some people go without a lot of organization, but I think if you want to do it comfortably and, well prepared, then having something like that is really a good idea. So what was the total weight of your equipment? And do you know the total weight without your camera gear, like without camera gear, with food, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So when I left home, my total pack weight with no food, no water was 22 pounds, which isn't super low for like an ultralight setup, but that also included 6 pounds of 7 pounds of photography gear. So I could get my weight down to like 15 pounds, maybe even 14 or 13 if I really went lighter. And I actually found there's a few things I just would have never brought, but we can talk about that later. But the heaviest items in my pack, I think 33% of my pack weight was all photography equipment. And I went into the Colorado Trail thinking about it from a project perspective. I had a goal to record at least one video at my campsite or from a location every single day of the hike. So I had to bring audio recording equipment. I had to have a tripod, so there was extra weight. I had to have batteries and ways to charge those batteries. And so, yeah, that added to the whole overall weight. But 22 pounds with no food and water is pretty good considering I had all that stuff with me. And then I think on my very first day when I left the house with food and water, I was at, I want to say it was 30 pounds. So not too bad. And my average was probably somewhere between 30 and 35 pounds with food and water.
That's kind of amazing.
Not bad, yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that's what doing a lot of the pre-planning gets you, you know?
For sure. And there was basically back in like April, May, I actually had that spreadsheet already, and I went to the Backpacking Light forums and I shared it with people. I'm like, how are some of you guys getting your pack weight so low? And they would look at my gear list and like, well, this part of your pack weight is really heavy. You could really reduce it by getting this and this instead. So that was really helpful. Specifically, where I had a lot of weight savings was in my cooking system. Before this trip, I was a Jetboil user. If you ever do any backpacking, Jetboil is a very popular, common setup. But it's, for what it is, you know, something you use like once a day, twice a day maybe, it's fairly heavy. So I switched to a small titanium pot and a little tiny stove called a BRS 3000 that weighs like 0.92 ounces. And it was amazing. It cooked just as well as a Jetboil, maybe not quite as fast, but it weighs like, you know, 1/10 of what a Jetboil weighs.
It's just one of those little fold-up guys, right?
Tiny, and they're not expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $30 on Amazon or something like that. And then your little fuel canister fits in the titanium pot. And then the little stove fits on top of that with a lighter. And I used like Bic mini lighters. So my cook system went from like, I want to say it was like a few pounds down to like 1 pound, you know. So that was a huge area where I was able to save weight.
That means a lot when you're trying to figure out, like, do I bring extra food? Do I get extra water?
Right.
Do I bring a lens?
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that was the thing. Knowing that I was going to take it seriously as a photography trip, I knew I needed to save as much weight as possible in the areas that weren't photography, and then also save as much weight as possible in the photography area as well.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about that, because I got a lot of questions about, like, so here are some of the questions. How did you balance photo gear and hiking gear? What's the minimal kit weight, meaning like photo kit weight for a hike like this? And, someone asked, what's the best lightweight tripod to hold, like a sturdy tripod? And I think, like, I know you have priority, right? Like, you have to have your tent and all of, your survival gear, but also, like, what was the thought process into your photo gear?
So I wanted to be able to photograph anything from, 16 millimeters all the way up to 200 millimeters. I would have loved to be able to go longer, but, a 100 to 400 lens is really heavy. Although I did think about bringing it. I was like, I would use it so much, but I decided to leave it at home. So I left home with actually two lenses, a Sigma 16 to 28 right here.
Cute.
And it's f2.8.
He's showing it.
Yeah, it's tiny. It doesn't
Yeah.
weigh, I think it weighs like, I don't know, 17 ounces or so. It's not that heavy. It's f2.8, so it's good for astrophotography. And then I had the Tamron 28 to 200, which weighs like 22 ounces, I think. It's really light. Covers.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's actually really awesome. I mean, I think it's almost as sharp as the 100 to 400. Honestly, probably 95% of my photos I took with this lens. In fact, once I got halfway through with the trail, my parents met me in a town called Salida, and I just gave them this lens, the wide-angle lens. I'm like, I'm not using it. Why am I carrying this around? It doesn't make sense. So I just used the one lens for the entire second half, the Tamron 28 to 200. It's not perfect. I mean, it doesn't have the best bokeh. It's got really bad flare resistance. If you shoot into the sun, it's pretty bad. It's sharp though, and it's very versatile, and I like it.
And it's light. It's lighter than like a 24 to 105 or something.
Yeah,
else.
it is. It's better than the 24 to 105, I think. So
Side note, I'm actually selling my 24 to 105 and my 100 to 400, and I'm getting the Tamron 50 to 400, and I'm keeping that 28 to 200. Like, I'm
Boom.
switching.
Yeah,
Sorry,
why not?
Sony.
Yeah, they're good lenses. So, but yeah, so that
They're a
was
lot
kind of
lighter.
my, yeah. And that, I mean, that for backpacking especially, I mean, it's, so I wanted like a really, really lightweight kit. I got super lucky. So this is the tripod I brought. It is carbon fiber. It weighs almost nothing, right? It's a Leophoto LS224CL. I don't think you can buy it, but they have one that's very similar you can buy. This is actually a setup that Mark Munch had specifically made for Munch instructors for travel. I don't know exactly what's different about it compared to what you can actually buy on their website, but it's a very minimal ball head. It's tiny, but it was perfect for that 28 to 200. And what I will say about backpacking in general, especially if you're trying to do ultralight, almost everything you carry should have multiple uses. So for me, the tripod was not only for photography, but I also used it as a kind of like a stand for my solar panel. So I could reposition my tripod and get solar whenever I needed it to charge my camera batteries and to charge my external battery that I used for powering my phone and other stuff. And then I also used it as a gravity system for my water filtration. So I kind of jerry-rigged my water filtration system so that it would do a gravity setup with my tripod so that I can filter my water while I'm setting up my tent or cooking, or I don't have to physically be filtering. It just filters it for me. So that was good to have that. I actually didn't make that realization until like day 10. I'm like, oh, I could use it for that. So yeah.
Smart. Now everyone's going to wonder how they can get their hands on that tripod.
They make one that's very similar. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but I don't know if I answered your question. Like, because the original question was, how did I prioritize photography gear versus other gear? And obviously, there's certain things you have to have. You need a tent. That was also an area where I had huge weight savings. I bought a really nice Cuban fiber tent, 2-man tent that sets up with just using my trekking poles from Durston. It's called the Durston X-Mid Pro 2. I already had a thermarest that was really lightweight, but wide and long, so it was comfortable. You could get by with a smaller pad, but you would be less comfortable, so I don't like to skimp on all my comforts.
I have that pad, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Trying to think, water filtration, stove. A lot of ultralight hikers don't use a stove. They just cold soak all their food, or they eat food that doesn't require cooking. But I don't know, man. They're like, having a nice warm meal at the end of the day is pretty awesome. So I chose to bring a stove. It doesn't add that much weight, really, if you do it right. I'm trying to think what else. Clothes. I had pretty bare minimum. I had one extra pair of boxers. I had one pair of shorts. I had a pair of thermal leggings. I had one sun hoodie, and I had one short sleeve shirt, and I had a stocking cap and gloves, thin gloves, really thin hunting
like
gloves.
Liners.
Yeah,
like
basically.
Merino liners or something.
Yep, which I didn't hardly ever use, maybe 1 or 2 days total. Raincoat and a puffy. And that's it for clothes. Oh, and like 2 pairs of socks. Or no, I'm sorry, I had 3 pairs of socks.
Because one you wore, and then 2 you didn't. You had packed.
Yeah, like in case they get wet or whatever. But that's it for clothes, and then the rest is food and water. And then I have like some survival gear, like a multi-tool that's good
first
for
aid kit. I saw
first aid kit, that kind of thing. And I make my own first aid kit, so it's pretty minimal. God, I'm trying to think what else. It's all on the spreadsheet.
I know. We could pull up the spreadsheet, but I think
sleeping bag, obviously.
Right. I think you got it. Did you buy a new sleeping bag? I feel like you did.
No, I had that sleeping bag already. I've had it for a couple of years. It's a Western Mountaineering Mega Light. It's not the lightest bag you could get, but it was pretty nice. And actually, since I ended that trip, I got some quilts that I'm gonna try out. So they're even lighter, and they allow you to kind of move around a little bit more. So anyway, Gear's boring. I know a lot of people love
I
to
know,
talk
right?
about gear, but
I know, but it is essential to having like a comfortable, fun trip. Like, I think if you're going through the trip and you haven't done enough prep and you're like miserable because your socks are wet and you didn't pack an extra because you were trying to save weight or whatever, then I think this is all valid to just like have a little discussion about, because you don't want to be miserable while you're doing this. And if you're trying to do a project at the same time, trying to do photography and have it be meaningful or enjoyable, then, you know, gear matters.
it does. And, you know, there's like a sweet spot that's probably different for every person in terms of comfort and weight. And you know, having done lots of backpacking in the past, I kind of know where I can push those limits a little bit. When I first started backpacking as a photographer, my pack weighed like 60 pounds, you know, so, but I've been able to shave that down a lot in the last 10 years. And a lot
Obviously,
of
by like half.
and, you know, the gear's come a long way too, though, but yeah.
That's true. That's true. All the glass is lighter. Okay, we have one more question in the gear portion, which is like, which water sanitizer did you use?
Oh, for filtration, I have a Sawyer Squeeze. So it's like this little black tube that has an inlet and an outlet. And I actually kind of customized that a little bit as well. I put this little adapter on it so that I could screw on smart water bottles to the end of it. And then at the top end of it, I got an adapter for my dirty reservoir. So I had a 4-liter, actually, give me a second. I have one right here.
He's tethered with his headphones.
Here. I got a new one because mine got a leak, and they sent me a brand new one, and I haven't even opened it yet. But it looks like this. It's a Hydro Pack Seeker, 4 liters. It's really light. But I got an adapter for this mouth that fits onto the Sawyer. So all I do is, you know, go to a stream or a lake, fill that up, and then just screw it onto the top end of the Sawyer, put my smart water bottle on the other end, and then just let it drip. Or you can squeeze it through, you know, if you're at a stop or something, but that's it. And then
put it on your tripod, let it drip.
And then the thing with Sawyers is you have to be really mindful about not getting it dirty. So the filter dirty, because as it gets dirtier and dirtier, it clogs, and then you don't get any water coming out the clean end. So a couple things for that. It comes with this little syringe, which I did not bring. But what I did instead is that with that bottom adapter, I could put another clean reservoir that's lighter than the syringe to the other end and use it to back. It's called backflow. You basically, you know, squeeze all the stuff back through the filter. And on the other end of the filter, I got like a garden variety little like hose mesh thing with a rubber seal on it. And I put that at the other end so that it would keep large debris from getting into the filter. That's it.
That's an awesome hack. I like it.
Yeah. I'm full of little awesome hacks.
Little awesome hacks.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of give us the overview of your gear. We touched on like some of the pre-planning that you did with your spreadsheet and whatnot, but
Tiny bit.
Right, a tiny bit. So let's talk about that now. Like, so here's the questions. Like, did you pre-plan where you were going to stay each night? And how did you plan your route, your 35-day
Yeah, so
adventure?
No, I did not pre-plan where I was going to sleep. However, as part of my planning process, I spent a lot of time on Gaia GPS, and I looked on the map where the Colorado Trail went through, and I identified target areas that I thought would be beautiful to stay at from a photography perspective, or places that I've always wanted to go to. Sometimes it was right on the trail, sometimes it was maybe a mile off trail. I had targets in mind in terms of like, okay, if I want to get to that spot in 3 days, I need to hike this many miles average over the next few days, kind of a thing. There was only a few of those locations that I was like, I really, really, really want to spend the night there. Otherwise, it was mostly just stop when you're tired, you know, or it's too dark to keep hiking.
How did you plan the route? And also, I kind of want to know, like, how did you plan your 0 days? And tell us what those are.
Yeah, so 0 day was a day off. basically, in a town. Basically, the route is preset, so the trail is the trail, right? But in terms of where I stayed and stopped and things like that, it was very dependent on my food and when I would get my food and where I would get my food. So you probably have a question in there about this, but a lot of people ask me, like, well, how did you get food? Did you bury food in the forest and then have to come back?
Did you cache? So one of the questions is, did you cache food? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I didn't. Yeah, no one does that on the Colorado Trail. But, well, maybe if you do if you're trying to do a record or something, you could do that. But anyway, basically, you have two approaches on the Colorado Trail. You can either not plan any of it. Well, I guess three. You can either not plan any of it, plan everything by mailing yourself packages to small towns, either to the post office in that town or to a gear store in that town or to a hostel in that town, which is also informs 0 days. So, for example, I had a 0 day in Breckenridge, which was my first 0 day, and I sent a box of food or resupply to the hostel I was staying at. So as soon as I got to Breckenridge, the hardest thing I had to do was hitchhike to the hostel and then get my food and then repack my pack with all my new food. And that was, I think, 7 days worth of food in Breckenridge. So then I had to count backwards. Okay, in 7 days, where am I going to be next? So from there, it was Twin Lakes, which is actually pretty far. So, and then from Twin Lakes, I didn't do a 0 day, but I did stay in a hostel there, or a cabin that I pre-reserved. So that was part of the flaw in my planning, is that I had in Breckenridge, Twin Lakes, and in Creed, I had pre-reserved rooms on specific dates, which is smart because you never know, like, if there's going to be availability when you get there on the day that you get there. But it's not smart in that you're kind of forced into being there at that day, right? So, if it's taking you longer or you're getting there faster, it's you're just kind of stuck to that schedule. So that was the only downside of kind of planning ahead that way, is that I was stuck to that schedule, but it was fine. It worked out for me. And also having those preset dates helps keep you on track. Like, oh, I gotta be in Breckenridge in 2 days. I better hike fast today. There's a lot of that.
I saw your story. You were like eating pizza, and I'm like, I would be like, I gotta get there so I can eat this hot pizza.
Oh man, yeah, food was a huge motivator.
Right?
Yeah.
It totally would be for me. Hot, cheesy pizza. Come on.
Yeah.
Before we get to some of these logistics, like on the hike, tell us about your training. How did you go about getting ready to do this thing?
Yeah. So even before I thought about doing the trail, I try to stay reasonably fit. I live at 6,700 feet elevation, so I'm at a nice elevation to stay fit in terms of cardio. So in the wintertime, usually I'm riding my Peloton a bit, and also doing some hiking around my house. And then for probably the last 2 years now, at least 3 or 4 times a week, I would almost every day do like a little 2 or 3 mile hike. Once I committed to doing the trail, though, I got really serious about training, and I live next to this cool mountain here in Durango. It's called Animas City Mountain. It's basically a big forested hill and has some nice overlooks and stuff. Goes through some ponderosa pines. But I did this huge loop every day, the same loop. It was 7 miles door to door from my house, and about 1,500 feet of elevation gain. So basically for 2.5 months, every single day I hiked 7 miles.
Dang, I wish I had that here. Well, I guess I could hike 7 miles. I'm planning to do a little bit of a trek. I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah. So that's how I. That's how I
talk about it at the end. Okay,
physically,
awesome.
yeah.
I mean, that's huge to have that space where you're at elevation and you're able to do that kind of thing. And I would think for anyone who's planning this kind of a thing that they're going to have to find their own way. We can talk about that at the end. Okay. Hike logistics. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
How did you go to the bathroom? AKA, how did you poop? Did you dig holes? Did you pack it? I thought we'd have a bunch of these questions. There was only one. You know who you are.
It's you usually it's every morning you get up and that's the first thing you want to do after you drink some coffee or something. And you hike off into the woods about, I don't know, 100 yards away or so and find a nice little spot that's got soft ground and you dig a hole. I brought this little like lightweight aluminum spade thing that I use to dig holes, but I found that I could just use like big fallen trees, like sticks from trees and stuff to dig holes. I ended up not using that thing. I sent it home with my parents halfway through because I just didn't need it.
I've used that thing and big rocks.
Yeah, so you dig a hole and you do your thing, and you could do we could do a whole demonstration on proper form if we wanted. But actually, this what I did this year is I purposely did not pack any toilet paper.
Wait, you didn't? Because that was on your list.
Yeah,
like a half roll.
Yeah, I didn't bring any toilet paper. I did bring some like wet wipes, just a little bit to kind of clean yourself up every day or two. But I bought it's called a backpacking bidet, and the one I bought is called the Holy Hiker bidet, backpacking bidet. And if you look at his YouTube videos, he shows you how to use it, and it's awesome. And a lot of people think it's really stupid and crazy, but he shows you how it's not. But basically, it's this tiny little piece of plastic that weighs like nothing, and it has 4 holes in it with a little arrow on the top pointing which direction the water comes out. And it's got a little rubber gasket at the bottom. And you put it, so everyone who does through hikes, they use smart water bottles, right? So you take one of your smart water bottles, and yes, it could be the one you drink from, and I'll explain why that's not a problem in a second. You take the lid off, you put the bidet in the top of the thing, you squirt, sprays water.
Do your thing.
Do your thing. It sprays you. And then I would just use like leaves or a bunch of grass that I could find and use that to kind of help clean up. And I found that was fine. It's perfect. And then I didn't have to worry about carrying out toilet paper or anything like that.
Nice. And then you're clean. Little bum wash.
Yeah, exactly. It's honestly is way better than toilet paper. Like I couldn't recommend it more. It does take some time to get used to and to do it right, but once you got it down, it's like
that.
Yeah,
and you link to that in the show description.
Yeah, and it's like $10 or something. It's nothing.
And the reason why it doesn't matter is because there's no backwashing. You just clean water goes out the end, nothing goes back in.
Right, and it doesn't backsplash onto your water bottle. If you think about it, like if here's your butt and you're spraying water like this, it bounces like that. Like it doesn't,
Y'all, this is why you need to watch the video.
It's gravity, right? It doesn't spray backwards into your bottle.
Okay, now I'm really glad we asked that question. All right, we got another question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I don't remember who this was. They said, one question. Chafing?
I think that was Kevin Lasota.
Probably.
No. Okay, so I didn't have any of that problem, but I did halfway through decide to switch from wearing. I almost always hike with Prana Zion pants or shorts, and I brought a pair of the kind that you can take the legs off, so it was nice. I could have shorts or pants. And what I was finding is like they were just really hot. Like there wasn't a lot of room for air circulation down there. So I switched over to a pair of Patagonia baggy shorts, and that was game changer. Just way more air circulation. You never felt like you were on fire, and you weren't sweating constantly. So, but I didn't have any problems with that. But I quickly realized that it was not the most comfortable to wear pants. So switching to the baggy shorts was amazing.
I like wearing pants, but I also run cold. So, all right. Now that we talked about clothes. So what about clean clothes? How did you clean your clothes? Did you clean your clothes? Because maybe you didn't. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So basically what I did was I carried a little bottle with Dr. Bronner's lavender soap in it. And you can use that for all kinds of stuff, but I used it for mostly doing laundry. So what I would do every couple of days is I would take, underwear, socks, maybe a shirt if it was really bad, and put it all in I got these big 2-gallon Ziploc bags. I just had one of them, but I took a 2-gallon Ziploc bag, put all my clothes in it, got to a stream or a lake, filled it with water, put a couple, 3-4 drops of the soap in there, and then sealed it, and then I did my laundry in the bag, rinsed everything out, and it was good to go.
Awesome.
Air dried it on a tent maybe, or on
or
a
the
tree.
tripod.
Yeah.
Multi-use tripod.
Yeah, but that's like, you do that every few days. It wasn't like, and then absolutely when you get to towns, you do laundry. So like, Breckenridge, I did laundry. Creed, I did laundry. Twin Lakes, I did laundry. Salida, I did laundry. But that's it. 4 times. Oh, I did laundry in Silverton too. Yeah.
So there you go. All your burning questions are answered about laundry and...
Yeah, so exciting.
and pooping in the woods.
Right.
All right. So, okay. So, did you bring something to sit on?
Oh, fun. So I did not. I did not bring anything to sit on. However, in Breckenridge, at the hostel I stayed at, pretty much every hostel or place where people spend a lot of time as thru-hikers, they have a hiker box. And it's basically stuff that people get rid of because they realize they don't want it anymore or don't need it or whatever. So sometimes it's got like half-empty fuel canisters or whatever. But in this box, there was like a Thermarest Z like foam pad, but it was just like a little sliver of one. And it folded up into like a little square and it weighed nothing. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I can use that to sit down on rocks and logs. So I took it and I started incorporating that into my daily backpacking routine, is using that as my chair.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have a little something comfortable to sit on.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you charge your batteries? You mentioned solar panels, but tell us about those.
So I knew going into the trip that the first half I would have more access to towns more frequently, where I could spend more time charging. So I didn't bring my solar panels for the first half. What I did have, and actually, do I have it here? No, this is like the smaller version of it. I had the 20,000 milliamp hour version of this little guy. This is the 10,000, and it's like it's a Nightcore NB 20,000. It's tiny. It's got two USB ports, a USB-C, a USB-A, and I would charge my camera batteries on that using. You've probably seen one of these before, but for Sony, it's like a little new MOA thing. Takes 2 batteries at a time, and it's a USB connection, and it would charge right here on this little guy, no problem. And then I would also use that to charge my phone and my audio. I use Rode Wireless Go for my audio, so I would have to keep those charged up. I brought my iWatch, so I'd have to keep that charged up. But that was about it in terms of device charging. My Garmin. That was pretty much priority 1, was my phone and my Garmin inReach. So basically that's how I did it. And then I knew after the second half after the first half that I would not have as many towns to visit. So that's when I added my solar panels in that I had purchased, and they're like Anchor. It's like a 22 watt solar panel. It's really nice. It folds up about this big. I don't know, like 12 by 5 inches, and it just fit right down into my pack, no problem. And you can charge through USB right to that. And I would use that as much as I could going from then on to keep things topped off.
And that's assuming you have sun. So
yeah, well, I was in Colorado, so most of the time you're going to have some sunlight. I got lucky. I didn't really have any problems with that. When I needed solar, I had it. So
good.
Which meant fewer clouds. So
right, I know. We have a question about that. I assume that you did some testing about how long it would, things would drain and things like that. Or did you just
I really didn't do any
Maybe
testing.
you didn't.
No, I just knew.
I would be like really concerned about it. I'm like, okay, I can go this long. I can use it this much, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought the 20,000 version of this, 20,000 milliamp hours, because there was a few times where it got almost empty, and I was, then you have nothing that you can charge your stuff with. And for me, the most important thing was my Garmin InReach, just to make sure, because I had set up my Garmin InReach to do, it would update my coordinates every 10 minutes.
Oh.
And so people could like follow along if they had the link and watch. And then I would also send, whenever I got to like different waypoints or, camps or tops of mountains, I would send a group text through my Garmin InReach to like 10 people who wanted to be on the list. And so it was important for me to keep that fully charged. And of course my phone fully charged, because that's what I used for my, for Gaia GPS, so that I knew where I was at and how much for blah, blah, blah. There's a great app that you can get for your phone that's for the Colorado Trail, and I think they do the Appalachian Trail, the CDT, the PCT as well, but it's called Far Out, and you can download different maps for it. And what's cool about Far Out is it'll show you where all of the water points are, how far away you are from that water point. Then there's also comments from people like, oh, it's dry now, or it's flowing great, or hey, there's really awesome campsites 0.2 miles south of here. Like, it was a great tool to just have a little bit more situational awareness about what's coming up next, so you could even plan ahead more kind of day to day. And then once you got to town or you had cell service, you can download the latest comments. So that was a great tool to use that as well.
People do smart things. They make apps, smart apps. All right. So this is a fun question. How did you keep your camera dry during those gnarly Colorado thunderstorms? Did you have any?
Did, for sure, yeah. Actually had a very scary moment one morning. But basically, I had a hyperlight chest harness bag that's waterproof. That I had basically kind of constructed a way for it to fit onto my shoulder straps. And so that's where I kept my camera at all times. And then everything else that I had, including clothes, sleeping bag, camera gear, batteries, things like that, I had these like Cuban fiber bags that are, they're not waterproof, but unless you like drop it in a lake, stuff inside is not going to get wet. And then I had things kind of color coded, so I'm like, oh, I need my gear bag. So like all my batteries and things like that were always in this bag. I had another bag that was just for like toiletries and survival gear. I had another bag that was, so it's just organized that way. Because my backpack that I have, it doesn't have like a bunch of pockets. It's just like a big giant tube. So you have to have things kind of organized so that otherwise you're just throwing stuff in a bag and where did it go? And,
it wastes time and it gets frustrating when you have to like pull everything out or whatever to look for the one thing.
So then I also had a pack liner for my backpack, even though I don't think that was really necessary. So I was never worried about stuff getting wet. But I did have one day, pretty much all day long, where it rained pretty much all day, set up camp, and it was just really damp. Everything was wet. I'm sure throughout that day I took my camera out of my bag a few times, so it got water on it a little bit. I wasn't worried about it dying. But then when I got it out the next day, both lens elements had condensation on both sides, like inside the inside of the element. And I was like, oh great, I don't have a camera anymore. That's awesome. But I put it in the sun and it dried out. But that was kind of a scary moment. I was like, oh, my lens is completely ruined, but it was fine.
That's good to know in case I need to do that one day.
Yeah. Condensation will kill you, man. It's
especially when you've done, I know, but especially when you've done all of that prep work and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what am I looking at here? Am I looking at no more photography and, all of that stuff? So
yeah, and the stupid thing I did is knowing that my camera and lens had water on them, I should have put them somewhere where they would have aired out overnight, but I kept them sealed inside the camera bag, which was in my tent vestibule. So I think it's just, there wasn't an opportunity for them to get dry. And then when the temperature changed, it just turned into condensation. So it was my bad.
We're glad it worked out fine in the end.
Too.
Right. All right. So let's get into the experience. Since we're talking about photography, let's just keep talking about that. Since we're talking about lenses, what were your expectations in terms of like getting the shots?
I feel like I preach this all the time, but I didn't have any expectations at all going into the trip in terms of what photographs I may or may not come home with. I had a few locations in mind in terms of that could be cool, but in terms of getting specific photographs, anything like that, I had zero expectations. And that just made it to where I was open-minded. Like throughout the day, if I saw something on the side of the trail or across the valley or whatever, or interesting light over there, I would just photograph it. Probably 90% of the photographs I took were handhelds. I didn't, since these cameras are ISO invariant, that's a whole other conversation, but you can shoot it like ISO 320 and it's basically as good as ISO 100 and you can have your shutter speed a little bit better. And so I wasn't worried about, I have to get that photo or this kind of photo. I was mostly just, I'm going to go to some really cool spots and take pictures when on the way. That was it,
Yeah. Yes, I do know. I actually, a little side note, I think that boils down to trusting yourself to do whatever photography comes to you and that you are going to get images that you like, even without the pre-planning. Like even without knowing what it is that you're going to get, I think it just boils down to trust. For me, it does anyway.
Yeah, and
I've learned that. By listening to this podcast. Well, I think, Matt, here's the thing. You have beat this into us about expectations. Not really beat, and also you've had a lot of guests on that have talked about like releasing some of the expectations. And for me, like early on, I was like, oh yeah, this is a great idea to kind of let all those go and trust myself and see what I can do. So. Yeah.
And honestly, I found that sometimes expectations can be a huge creative block in terms of having some preconceived ideas that then prevent you from being open to seeing other things that you might find interesting. Now, I will say, could I have come away with a few more incredible photographs with a little bit more planning ahead? Probably. But when you're doing a thru-hike and you have limited food for each part of the trail, you really have, for me, I had to put photography kind of second. Even though the purpose of the trip was to take photos on the Colorado Trail, actually making it to the next part where I could get more food was more important than staying an extra day at a specific spot so I could maybe get better light. It was mostly just, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. It's you just make the best of what you got. And for me, this is going to sound like a broken record, but I think that's where good photographers can differentiate themselves from the pack. If you can make a good photograph in what you don't think is ideal conditions or maybe not that exciting of a location, that's because you're putting more into it as a photographer. You're bringing something to the table creatively with your vision, with your voice, and you're not relying on conditions. You're not relying on the location to deliver a good photograph.
Exactly. And I think this goes along with some of the other questions that we got here, which is like, how did you balance photography with the miles? But I like this one too. You kind of touched on that. Did you have to consciously limit the time you spent photographing? So like if you were like, okay, this one day, or like, let's say you had 3 days to get to this one spot that you wanted to get to, did you have to make sacrifices? I see something over there, but I'm not going to do it because I have to keep hiking. Like, how did that work?
I will say that just based on my knowledge of Colorado, I was able to, as part of my planning process, I was able to kind of prioritize mileage or doing less mileage in the places that I thought would be more photogenic. For example, when I got to the San Juans, my miles per day went from like 20 to 24 miles a day down to like 11 or 10 a day, because I knew that I would want to spend more time in those places. And there was certain parts of the trail that I knew weren't going to be as photographically exciting, that I'm doing 24 miles today, and I'm not, if there's a cool photograph on the way, great. But today it's all about getting 24 miles done, so I purposely planned ahead in terms of giving myself more time in the locations that I knew would have more potential.
Amazing. I mean, I think that sounds right? Because you know it and you could plan ahead to do that. So
yeah. So it's not like I don't plan at all, but
I'm picturing myself hiking 24 miles in a day.
Honestly, okay, so going into this thing, right? I did 7 miles a day, right? Which sounds like a lot, but then you contrast that with doing a 28-mile day, and it's like 7 miles is nothing. Mm-hmm. My very first day on trail, I did 28.3 miles, I think, 28.4 miles first day. And yeah, it's hard to fathom, but your body adapts, and you do it.
Right? You're like, okay, here I am. I'm as prepared as I'm going to be. So you mentioned going up some mountains and doing side trips, right? Like, were those diversions for photography?
Partially for photography and partially just to get to the tops of mountains, because I'm a mountain climber and I love mountains. And so going into the trip, I looked, once again on the trail, I'm like, okay, what are some mountains adjacent to trail that I could do on the way? And I think I identified like 30 or 40 peaks that looked interesting. And then based on how I felt that day or the weather, I would either go do them or not. So that was kind of the plan. Did I say 20 peaks today? I think I did 30 peaks total. Yeah, 30 peaks.
You said you identified 30 peaks, but
I think I identified about 40, and I did 30 peaks. So a few of those were specific for photography, and most of it was just, that looks fun.
The masochism comes through.
Yeah, like getting up at 2:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Hiking to the top of the second highest mountain in Colorado, photographing sunrise from the top, hiking all the way back to your campsite, tearing down your campsite, and then hiking another 17 miles to Twin Lakes for your resupply.
Piece of cake. Sounds like a good adventure.
That was a rough day.
Yeah, that sounds like a rough day.
But man, the sunrise up there was incredible.
It's one of those things that it sounds like you just do because you're there, and it's not going to be, the opportunity isn't coming again anytime soon.
Yeah, not easily. I mean,
right.
To get to some of these locations just to climb them again, you're going to spend 3 or 4 days of, driving and then backpacking in, and yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to knock these mountains out. I'm here. Let's do it.
That's right. All right. So, maybe we didn't answer this. Did you divert a lot for photography, or did you just kind of find it along the trail? Or did you like set up camp and then go off looking? What did that look like? Yeah.
So kind of more the latter. There was a lot of locations where I knew there'd be great photographs somewhere in there. So once I got set up, then I would go on like a little side hike, and like there was this one spot where I went back up to this little ridge probably 3 times to get a photograph up there, because the light was so good on the last morning that I was like, I gotta go back. So then I was like, I added like an extra mile and another 1,000 feet of vertical gain to just get to that vantage point for the photograph. But it was mostly just leveraging what was nearby and hoping for the best.
Okay, so there you go. Did you Oh, this was an interesting question. Did you find, I'll just ask it, did you find making unique creative work easier on a long expedition? And I'm going to combo it with this question. Did you experiment with any unique photography techniques or styles?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the second question first. I did experiment a little with ICM, intentional camera movement. Not a ton, but just a little bit.
Fun for fun.
I don't think I got anything interesting, but it was still fun to mess around with that. In terms of finding it easier for creativity, I do think it is harder to be creative when you're so focused on, I have to get to my next destination today, and I only have this much time to do it, and also I'm tired. Like, that definitely reduces your creativity for sure. But at the same time, I found myself just noticing little things along the trail. Like, there was this one day where I was hiking kind of down this section that was in thick woods, and it was like maybe 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, and there's light filtering through the tree canopy, and there's these little wildflowers growing on the forest floor, and every once in a while one of those flowers would catch the light and everything else around it would be dark. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll look for some of that as I hike down and photograph it once I see it. And whether or not those photos are any good or not, I don't know. But, I found it creatively freeing to just be open to finding things. And then once I found something that I thought was interesting, I would stop, take a quick photo, and then move on. Like, there's an interesting log with really cool patterns on it. Photograph it. There's a cluster of wildflowers on a hillside. Photograph it. There's an amazing view of some mountains I'm familiar with some clouds floating over. Photograph it. So it's mostly just kind of letting, kind of loosening the control of creative process a little bit, and letting nature and the trail itself kind of dictate what I found interesting, and then just following my instincts to capture an interesting photograph.
And I want to point out, you set yourself up for success too, because you had that, you had your camera right in front of you that you could just pick up and use anytime. Like, it was right there, so it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of time. Yeah, you didn't need time. If you saw something interesting, like, boom, you had it in your hand. Like, that's all it took, right? So, and if you're doing handheld, then, and you don't need your tripod for that specific moment, then click, 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 put it away, keep going.
Yeah, and I mean,
maybe a minute, maybe two. I don't know.
You could get by without a tripod on a trip like this, but I had to have one for the video, and also, for those low light sunrise, sunset shots. You gotta have a tripod. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Unless you're shooting at like ISO 3200, give me a break.
How about 10,000? ISO 10,000. Just kidding.
I mean, you can. Good luck printing.
Yeah. Hey, AI does a good job now, right? Just kidding. That's not what this show is about. We're moving on to hiking. All right. So let's see. Oh, just answer this really quick. Did you find long distance hiking and landscape photography? Did those go well together? Did you find that you could put them together pretty easily?
I think for my approach to photography now, it goes really well together. Like, if you don't have a predestined spot in mind where you want to capture a photograph or a composition, and you're just more open to responding to what you come across, it's really good for it, because you're going to come across lots and lots and lots and lots of diverse and interesting subjects every single day. Even in the most boring sections of trail, there's stuff that I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, So I think it goes really well, especially for someone who's into like smaller scenes or, more intimate scenes. I think the possibilities are endless. In fact, I can't remember which section it was, but I remember texting my photography friend Kane. I was like, this section of trail is like an intimate photographer's paradise, because there was just so many things right off trail that you could capture. I mean, it was almost distracting. You're like, okay, but I gotta keep going. So sometimes it was hard. Like, oh, I want to photograph that. Let's keep going. Let's go. So
especially when you've trained yourself. Right. Especially when you've trained yourself, when you see something like this is what I've been doing is like, I want to, when I see something that's interesting, I want to go photograph it. Like I want to give my like intuition that, I don't know. Anyway, I want to be able to do that. And so to walk away from it is like, kills me inside a little bit.
It was also a great exercise in being picky, like, okay, yeah, that's interesting, but I think there's something very similar to that'll be better. And so then it was like mostly like, okay, planting a seed, that's an idea, and I'm going to come across something that's the same thing, only better later on. So there was a lot of that
and releasing some of the FOMO maybe.
Yeah, no, I had no FOMO. I was like way more excited about eating dinner and sleeping.
Yeah, so let's... I would be too. I'd be like, okay, I got to get these bad boy shoes off. They got to come off. So, all right. So that's interesting that you bring that up because one of the questions here is, did you hit days where the urge to photograph was overwhelmed by the fatigue of hiking? How did you, compensate? And also in that vein, did you find yourself, if you had a long distance to go and some fatigue, did you find yourself altering how you made photos?
Well, I will say one of the cool things about a thru hike is that you have so much trail ahead of you almost the whole time that I was always like, yeah, this is nice, but tomorrow will be more of the same or better. So I was never like, oh, I'm so sad I can't stay here, because I was always like, ooh, in 8 miles I'm going to be here, and that's going to be cool too. So I was constantly looking forward to things that were coming up, and the things that I was currently at, I would take advantage of them photographically if I could, or if the light was, what I wanted for that scene, whatever. But I never felt like, oh man, I wish I had another day to spend here, mostly just because I knew there's going to be more opportunities in the next day or two to get something better. There was one day that I was like, oh man, I wish the clouds were better. But that was just like one time, because I was at like such an incredible spot, and it just didn't really work out. But that was like really the only time.
I was going to say something, but I can't remember now because I was so involved with your...
Yeah, and I feel like you just asked me like 7 questions and I only answered like one of them.
I know. I did the Andrew Huberman thing. Have you ever listened to him?
I do.
He asked like a minute-long question. No, you answered it because, if you wanted to accomplish something in a day, did you find yourself altering? I think you answered this, how you take photographs. I think you were either just like, I'm not going to do it because I want to get there, and I don't have FOMO because I just want to enjoy the experience. Like, I don't have to make photos every single minute, and I don't have to be looking for photos every single minute either. Like, that gets exhausting too. You have to have, it seems like if you're going to do this kind of trip, there needs to be some sort of a balance with that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can't beat yourself up or get upset by the photography side of things because A, you have so much more other stuff to worry about, and B, I mean, your mood is a huge thing. Like, staying in a positive mindset was really important for me, and I constantly would do things to keep myself centered in that way, in terms of if I needed time alone or if I wanted the company of another person, like I would purposely try to get those needs met because I knew it was good for my mental health to keep going.
Yeah. So were there a lot of people on the trail?
Way less than I was expecting, for sure. But I got really lucky because one of my biggest fears going into this as an extrovert was just having day after day after day of being by myself. And I got really lucky.
Some people are like, my dream.
I know. Well, don't get me wrong, I enjoy that too, but like I need both. And
yeah, same.
And I got really lucky. Like I want to say it was day 3 or 4. I met this person, this girl that lives in Aspen, and we got to talking, and we have a very similar background in mental health, so we had something easy to talk about that we knew a lot about. And then our itinerary was almost identical. So I was like, oh, we should just like camp together when we can, and that way we have someone to hang out and talk to at night. And so basically we hiked together for like 280 miles of the trail together, pretty much off and on. But it was good to have someone that I could hang out with almost every night, just to, how'd your day go? Like, what did you see today? You know, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And I think this goes along with this question. That's why I asked this question, if you like, you know, if it was busy, because the question was, how did the solitude and isolation of the wilderness impact your creative process? And so you would have to, that would mean that you were isolated and in solitude. But I assume sometimes it was really just you and nature, you know, like maybe quite often. So did that impact your creative process?
For sure. I mean, I feel like I did. I'm a better photographer when I'm by myself, but I'm in a better mood when I'm with other people. So I have to do both. So typically what that looked like is during the day I would be by myself, and then at night at camp I would hopefully be camped next to someone I could talk to. So like there was one day where I was on Collegiate West 2 or 3. Collegiate West 3. It starts at Cottonwood Pass. So in the morning, I woke up about 1.5 miles from Cottonwood Pass. I was at this amazing lake with a mountain behind it, incredible scene. There was a giant moose that walked right through the lakes right below me. And then that day, I hiked up past the trail up onto a ridge. And there's this ridge of 13,000-foot mountains that goes for like 10 miles that's kind of parallels the trail. And I just followed those mountains the whole day by myself. And I ran into tons and tons of ptarmigan, which are these like birds that are camouflaged to look like rocks. They're pretty cool. They're kind of like grouse. I like to call them thunder chickens, but that's my own thing. And then I ran into,
they shall be named
thunder chickens. Yes. And then I ran into a herd of mountain goats. They were like, a couple of them are juvenile, and they were playing on this snow field at the top of this ridge, like jumping up and down in the snow and stuff. It was so fun to watch them. And you know, just moments like that where completely by myself, me in the mountains and nature, and just enjoying every minute of it. I mean, I remember that specific day I texted my friend and I said, this is like pure Colorado heaven. Like, this is Colorado, quintessential Colorado right here. Like, I'm experiencing it the way it needs to be experienced.
And for a Colorado photographer.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Mountains in every direction, mountain goats. Like, what else do you want? You know?
Yes, Nirvana. Colorado photographer Nirvana.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll have to message Matt for where that location is.
And there was no thunders. There was no weather that day, so I could stay above tree line all day. It was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a desert photographer. I hardly ever see mountains.
No, they're hard to photograph, I think, but
I think so too. I agree. All right. We're going to talk about the experience. I have no idea how much longer this will go, but this is like the meaty part. So you have shared quite a bit with us, Matt. So you're doing amazing.
Okay, good.
Okay. Just wanted to give you that little like boost of confidence. I really love, this is where a lot more of the questions that I really love come in. And so I'm really excited for this. So what were your biggest like setbacks on the way? Like, did you have any big ones, or like, and if so, how did you overcome them? And I assume that has to do a lot with your mindset and keeping track of that too. So tell us about that.
A lot of the setbacks were logistical in nature that then impact kind of how you're feeling about the day or about the future. For example, the shoes I wore, I just wore the normal insoles. I had Ultra Lone Peaks 6s. Yeah, I'm wearing them right now. And the stock insoles are like really thin, and then, you know, if you're hiking 20 miles a day, your feet just hurt. So like the first thing I did, I got to Breckenridge, just buy new insoles, like really nice, chunky, really comfortable insoles. That was a game changer. So that was a huge setback because it was causing literally physical pain to my feet. I had one night where I had set my tent up. I was at this high mountain lake at 12,800 feet, and it was really windy, and my tent literally blew over at 3 a.m. with me inside of it. So like the poles just collapsed and the tent just folded in on itself with me inside of it. So I had to like push the tent up, you know, and like get out of the tent and rebuild the tent basically.
I would have just wanted to lay there.
Yeah.
Just let the wind blow.
And so that was like not really a setback, but you know, like disturbs your sleep. Mm-hmm. And it's already hard enough to sleep on trail because you're in a sleeping bag, and I don't know, it's getting a good night's sleep is not super easy, even if you're super tired.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a setback, but not really a major one. I mean, honestly, I'm struggling to think of a whole lot of setbacks. I mean, I had everything so dialed in planning wise that it was hard to have many setbacks.
Awesome. And I think too, having a good mindset going into it, like really helps you overcome, like you probably didn't think anything that happened. A lot of things that happened were a big deal because if you've got this mindset, like, oh, stuff's going to happen, so I'm just going to deal with it when it comes here and, you know, work around it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And I will say that the thru hiking community and culture is they like to help each other. So like on my second day, third day, I can't remember, I ran into this guy who like his iPhone cable like just didn't work, and I happened to have an extra one, so I just gave it to him. And then way later on in the trail, my lighter ran out of lighter fluid, so this guy was like, oh, I have an extra, here you go. So like, you know, stuff like that, little things, like people just help each other out. Like, oh, do you need, oh, that day I did that crazy mountain ridge running thing I did, there's no water up there, and I got about halfway through, and my friend that I had been hiking with, coincidentally, we ran into each other again right at this ridge. And I was like, do you have any extra water? And she's like, actually, yeah, I have extra water. And so she gave me extra water, which helped me get to the next, you know, get through that next section until I could get to a water source. So little things like that, like the other hikers can, you know, we help each other out a lot. So that was nice to see. It's
like a special little like short-term community, which is really kind of cool.
It is. It's very cool.
Okay. Can you share a funny or unexpected moment with wildlife or people?
Oh, for sure. I had a very, 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 very incredible experience one night where had a big day of hiking. I got to this campsite probably an hour and a half before sunset. It was right close to this mountain ridge, but just below tree line. And it was really the only water source in this section, so I was like, I have to stay here. And I was camped right next to these willows. And if you don't know what willows are, it's like these thick bushes that are like usually about as tall as a person. Also, favorite food of moose, turns out. So I set up my tent and got in my tent to change. I think I was changing out of my sweaty shirt into a different shirt. So I changed shirts, got out of my tent, I was going to go over and start cooking dinner. I heard all this rustling behind me. So I turned around, and literally like 20 feet away was a mama moose and a baby moose. And I was like, oh, crud. But also, wow, that's amazing. But also, I'm going to die tonight. You know, like I was terrified because, you know, moose and babies, like you just never know, like they can get very territorial. So I was very cautious about that. And then 10 minutes later, bull moose joins them, comes down the hillside and joins them. So I had 3 moose hanging around me. Literally, they stayed around until after sunset. It was an amazing sunset. And I got some pictures of them with the amazing sunset behind them. And that was pretty cool to witness that. And then eventually they just left. And then about 3 a.m, the bull moose woke me up. He was making all these weird sounds, and he was eating like literally right next to my tent, but making all these, you know, just weird sounds. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll get up. So I got up and waited for him to move on. And then I hiked up to this mountain nearby, and I photographed the full moon at sunrise setting behind the moon set was setting behind these mountain peaks. So I was like, thanks for waking me up, man. You know, that was cool. So that was very unexpected and a very interesting day.
I have heard that about moose. Oh my goodness. I bet we could like talk for like hours and hours about like so many stories. All right. I'm not normally a cusser, but here's the question.
Okay.
Any scary shit happen?
I mean, that was probably the scariest thing.
Really?
Because I was just really worried about, because they were so close to me. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really in a thick forest, so it was not like I could just run through the trees. I mean, I just felt very vulnerable. I had one day of hiking down in this big river valley surrounded by mountain peaks. Big thunderstorm came rolling in. And I'm in this big open meadow next to a river, and there's lightning bolts flying everywhere. And so I like had to go up into the trees a bit and take shelter. It was hailing constantly. So that was a kind of a scary day a little bit, just because the lightning was so close.
And then there's hail, which...
Yeah, and the hail, yeah. But other than that, no, nothing. Well, okay, let me take it back. So I also, closer to the end of the trip, I was camped at this high mountain lake, and there's a 13er there that I've always wanted to climb called White Dome. It's like 13.7, and it's right at the end of the Grenadier Range, so it's got these incredible views of some of the most jagged mountains in Colorado. So I knew it would be awesome to get up there for sunset, and I was literally right next to it for my campsite. But there's no route up it. It's a lot of scrambling and loose rock and really dangerous. But I did it, and I went up there, and it took me a while because it was really treacherous terrain, and I had to take my time. But this is the first time I've ever been on top of a mountain intending to photograph sunset, when I was like, I don't think it would be safe to do this in the dark, to come down. I just felt so strongly that it would be a very bad idea to try to down climb that mountain in the dark. So I took some photos, and then I down climbed while there was still light. And it was really nasty down climbing them, and just gross scree and rock and loose rock everywhere, and very, very steep. No trails or anything, just mountain goat style.
I think this is a case where you used your intuition from your experience and whatnot. Protect yourself.
10 years ago, I probably would have done it, but I don't know.
But you live to tell the tale.
Exactly.
That's right. What was your favorite place?
Oh, favorite place. So there is this area of the trail that's pretty much surrounded by 13,000-foot peaks, and there's like a series of lakes down in this basin, and that lake has an incredible view of a 14er called Sunshine, and that was probably one of my favorite places. I got some really good light one morning up there. There was a moose down in the lake. I mean, it was just idyllic. And then second place, there's another high mountain lake that I had to bushwhack off trail about 2 miles to camp at. But I'd always want to go up there because I knew that lake has one of the most amazing views of a 14er called Mount Huron that I wanted to capture, and I was able to get that in some really good light too. So those are probably my two favorite spots. And of course, they are both tied to photographs. So there you go.
More Colorado nirvana.
Exactly.
So there's a couple of questions that go kind of together. Jason in the Wilderness asked this. He said, which sections surprised you as being more interesting than expected? Well, I guess they don't. So I'll ask that first.
Yeah. So there's a section of trail that's not that far after Denver that goes through this area called Lost Creek Wilderness. And there's like these big granite boulders, and it's actually had a big wildfire went through there back in like 2001. Hayman Fire it's called. And so a lot of it's scorched earth, but I just thought that was really stunning in kind of a weird, surreal way. Like I wasn't expecting that section of trail to be as pretty as it was.
He also said that was his favorite, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, which segments are best as far as scenery/challenging balance?
Oh, for sure, like everything between Creed and Durango. So that's like section 21 through 28, well, I'd say section 21 through 27 is like, if that's all you could do, that would be what you should do. It's awesome. It's incredible. It's goes through the San Juans. You're in incredible terrain. It's beautiful.
All right. How much weight did you lose, Matt?
I lost 20 pounds.
That's it? Well, you didn't have that much to lose from the beginning, I think.
No, I think I weighed 175 when I left my house, and I got home and I weighed 155.
Did you think you would lose that much?
I thought I would lose about 15, so losing 20 was kind of surprising.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you gained it back already?
About half, yeah. Yeah.
All right, send in some candy bars, people. Just kidding.
No, I'm good.
Ugh. Big candy bar sounds good.
That's one of the other things I did to prepare for the trail is I quit drinking. So like 2 months before I left, I stopped drinking completely. Stopped drinking beer, yeah. And then I had maybe like 4 beers total on trail, like at town stops. Mm-hmm. So, not having that calorie intake was also huge.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're back at it now, aren't you?
A little bit.
For anyone who doesn't know, Matt loves beer, so this is a big sacrifice.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. All right. How many hours? I love this question. How many hours did you sleep the night of your return? Did you just fall into your bed? Like, I would have just fallen into bed with like all of my hordes of pillows.
I'm trying to remember. I'm sure it was like 10 hours. Yeah, it was a lot. And then I didn't have anything for like the next 3 or 4 days, so I tried to sleep in as much as I could for like 3 or 4 days.
And it's interesting. We found this out years ago. You can make up sleep. Like even if you've lost sleep over a year, you can actually make it up over time. So you were probably just doing that. Yeah, and
I will say like I had a pretty good sleep ritual on trail. I mean, other than that one day, I was usually getting up a little bit before sunrise and going to bed around 9 or 10, at the latest. So it wasn't like I was getting 4 hours of sleep every night or something like that.
Right. That doesn't sound sustainable either.
No, plus you're just pushing yourself so much physically that you need the sleep,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of your food. Like it's part of your refueling regimen.
Oh,
you
sure.
have to sleep. Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. Okay, Beth Payne, is that your mom?
It is.
Okay. Hi, Beth. Hi, Mom. She asked, what would you have done differently? I kind of put this, we're now in this post-hike reflection area, and I put hers, like, Beth, I put yours at the top because moms are the most important. So what would you have done differently, Matt?
I probably would have been a little bit less regimented with the amount of preparation I did around food and locations. I think I would have liked to have more flexibility to buy food that was different than what I had been eating. So just a little bit more flexibility around food and schedule, I think would have been nice to have. I spent a lot of time watching these YouTube videos from this guy called Gear Skeptic, and he has these amazing spreadsheets and talks about like electrolyte balance and has these huge menus of food that you can like figure out, and I just used that to build my entire everything. So I had every day was in a big gallon-sized Ziploc bag, and then within there was all the food for that day. And every day had about 3,000 calories worth of food in it, and a lot of the same kind of stuff. And, it just gets old having the same stuff.
All right. I'm kind of a creature of habit, so I might like the same thing, but I think after X amount of time, it's like, whatever. Here's the thing. As long as it's not Mountain House beef stroganoff, I'm fine.
I will say this. One thing I did do that was kind of clutch, it was really awesome, is there's a hot sauce company called Melinda's, and they make okay hot sauces, but they sell these little like sample packs where you can get like 8 different hot sauces in these little bottles to try.
Oh, the little tiny ones?
Yeah, so like in every resupply box, I had a different bottle of hot sauce. So I could put that in my mac and cheese or, bear burrito, whatever. So like that was a nice way to kind of mix things up a little bit.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's smart. Good job. Right, what's one thing you left at home that you wish you had stuffed into your pack?
Honestly, the only thing that might have been interesting is to have like a telephoto lens. Like 200 millimeters is good, but I would have loved to have a little bit more reach. So it would have been
Did you
nice.
not put it in cropped sensor mode?
Yeah, you can crop, but I don't know. It would have been really cool to have just a little bit more reach, like a 100 or 400 or something like that. It's just so heavy.
I know.
And it takes up so much space too,
Yes.
So other than that, like I'm trying to think if there's anything I switched out or like ended up buying along the trail. Like, I bought like little treats like at grocery stores that were nice to have, things to look forward to, like candy bars or caramels, things like that to just like kind of get you excited. But other than that, I felt like everything I needed I had.
Y'all, Matt was well prepared. There you go. I feel like you've answered this, but did covering all that ground on foot change your perception of Colorado landscapes? Or did you just think, yeah, they're even more awesome than I mean,
I definitely had a few days where I was in some areas where it's not like your prototypical Colorado landscape. There's no big mountains, there's no, things like that. But there was still some beautiful scenes and, more pastoral. And so I think I just had a growing appreciation of things that weren't necessarily rooted in big mountains, like some more simple scenes that were interesting to photograph that I liked. And I think that'll help round me out in other places that don't have the same type of terrain as well in the future, I think. But I think the other thing I realized, because, I've been harping on it for so long about, getting more and more into intimate landscapes and smaller scenes, I did have a reignited appreciation for big, like grand landscapes, like, because I saw so many of them. And it made the realization that there's a lot of untapped potential still out there that photographers just have not even hardly touched the surface, it feels like. And I follow pretty much every Colorado landscape photographer I can think of. And I came across lots of stuff that I was like, man, look at that, So I think it kind of reignited an interest in me to go to some of those places with the intention of doing more grand landscapes. That's
kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, Josh Cripps asked. So some people I like when I copied, their names got in here, some didn't. Sorry if I don't mention everybody, but sometimes it's fun to know who asked the question. So did your motivation to do photography change as you hiked the trail?
I think like any other day when you're out with a camera, you're more or less motivated depending on your mood or depending on the types of scenes you come across. There was definitely days where I was very, very, very excited about photography, and there was other days where I was like, not really that into it today. So yeah, it changed constantly, but I always found myself coming back to it. There were so many interesting moments where I was like, wow, that's amazing. I had this one time, I was climbing this mountain and I was photographing this scene in the distance at 200 mils, and I hear this rustling, and I look out the corner of my eye through my camera, and about 15 feet away, this fox is just running up the mountain towards me. I was like, what? So I photographed this fox in this giant landscape, it was beautiful. Stuff like that, it just, when those kind of things happen to you in nature, it's just, oh, this is so fun. And now I remember why I'm doing this. This is so special. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's invigorating.
Yeah, and that invigoration stays with you. At least
it does. Yeah, because it's, what is it? The photographer's high, for sure.
Oh, big time. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering this, and someone asked it. Did you have moments of doubt that you'd be able to complete your journey? And if so, how did you get over those?
Well, you asked an closed-ended question, so I'm going to give you a closed-ended answer, and the answer is...
dang it.
The answer is
Come
no.
on.
I really didn't. I had a few days where I was like, oh, that was not great, but I was always excited for what the next days would hold, so staying focused on what was coming up for me just kind of kept me going. I wasn't never really worried that I couldn't finish. I did have one, I forgot to mention this, right when I started the Collegiate West, I had this weird dental thing happen where like my gums were bleeding a lot, and I don't know what, like something got in my gums. Like,
it was the hot sauce, Matt.
No, it was not. Something happened. I think it was a toothpaste I was using, because I was using these toothpaste tabs, which you have to chew up. I'm thinking like the grit of those got in there and it inflamed my gums, and then they were bleeding and it was painful, and so like that was concerning. I was like, oh man, is this gonna get infected? But it just went away. So I just maybe got lucky, but that was the only moment where I was like, this could be bad. I never got
right, but that wasn't
blisters.
Like you didn't get any blisters? No blisters?
Like a tiny one on my pinky toe. And it was nothing.
Yeah. I mean, if you keep your feet dry, you can prevent that too, if you're prepared. I think a lot of this is like really having been pre-prepped with the training and all that stuff to, so that anything that comes up. Yeah, exactly. All right. What was the most unexpected thing you didn't prepare for?
I think once again, just wanting to spend more time in towns would have been fun. I got lucky because I was able to get to a couple of the towns early, which meant I could do a 0 day that I wasn't planning on doing. But that was nice. So I would have wanted a little bit more of town time.
Like stay 2 nights or something?
Yeah, or like stay a night in Leadville, stay a night, in towns I didn't even go to, that kind of thing. I think if I wasn't doing all these extra credit side trips, I could have probably planned a little bit more of that kind of stuff in there, but yeah.
I still like the phrase extra credit.
Well, that became my trail name. So on through hikes, you get a trail name, hopefully, and it has to be someone else names you. And I've told so many people about oh yeah, I did 513ers yesterday. As it's extra credit. And they're like, oh, that should be your trail name. I'm like, I like that. So that's what my trail name is, extra credit.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it works.
Now I want to know what my trail name would be, but I have to do it to go get it.
Right. You kind of got to earn the name, either through something funny happening to you or a personality trait that someone else notices.
Mine would be a snafu with the trail bidet or something.
There was a girl I met, her name was Calamity. And I met her on the side of the trail because her water filter was completely clogged and useless. And I was like, oh, how'd you get your trail name? And she's like, stuff like this happening to me all the time. I'm like, that makes sense.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
Just don't call me Hot Mess. I'm over that.
Fair.
All right. Scott Everly asked, I have a little bit of tears in my eyes. What was your most unexpected source of joy or awe during your time on the trail? And, was there a time or moment that surprised you? Let's answer this. What was your most unexpected source of joy or awe? Love it.
Unexpected.
Or just any time that you felt joy or awe that you were like, wow, this is amazing. Tell us about that.
For sure, the wildlife encounters. I haven't had a ton of wildlife encounters, believe it or not, in all my time hiking. It just doesn't happen that often. So to have so many different wildlife encounters was really, it just made those days much more rememberable, because especially the moose and the fox and the mountain goats, when that kind of stuff happens to you as a photographer, it's really special to see those animals in their native habitat doing their thing, so that was probably the most unexpected source of awe for me, other than some of the smaller scenes and unexpected locations that I enjoyed photographing, things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I like joy in the small stuff too.
Yeah.
It's nice. I also love this question, and I'm sorry, I don't know who asked it, but this person says, I always find myself in a bit of a funk post-travel, and have trouble adjusting to getting back into my normal routine and responsibilities with family and day-to-day life, most especially solo travel. I find this too. Do you find this to be the case for you? And if so, how do you manage it? Like, how did you do it this time?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, it's a pretty well-documented phenomenon for people who do through hikes to experience depression when they're done. And in fact, or really any big thing that you do, when it gets completed and you're like high from it, then when it's done, and a part of that's our dopamine regulation system in our brains. Like our dopamine systems want to be at neutral at all times. So whenever you're experiencing intense pleasure or elation and you have dopamine, your brain is like, okay, let's get back to baseline as fast as possible. And what happens when you experience something over and over and over again, like whether that be alcohol, food, like really good food, like ice cream or chocolate, and you just keep eating and you get more. What happens is your brain is countering it so severely that when you're done with it, you actually feel depressed or angry or anxious. And that's why I think so many more people are experiencing depression and anxiety right now, is because we have such easy access to pleasurable things. Like think about like YouTube or watching streaming TV, or just everything that we want that gives us joy and pleasure is so immediately accessible now. It didn't used to be. And the brain has this built-in thing. There's a name for it. I can't remember it, but it's basically like a seesaw. And I definitely experienced that coming off the trail. But I was knew it was coming. So I intentionally just gave myself a lot of work to do afterwards. So keeping myself really busy, giving myself things to look forward to was important. I also purposely planned a trip with my wife. Like the weekend after, we went to Telluride Blues and Brews Music Festival. So that was like a nice way to just kind of get back into things and spend some time with her, and kind of just have time to wind down from the trail. So I think intentionally giving yourself things to look forward to that keep you busy is probably the best advice I can give somebody.
Yeah, I think it's important to know, at least be cognizant that this could be a thing, right? And to even notice your own tendencies and how this works for you, and to be able to build in some post-travel countermeasures. Like I know when I get back from a trip, I need to give myself kind of a day to just get back into the swing of things. I don't want to have anything planned like big for the day after, because I don't know, maybe I'm going to be super tired.
Right.
I am in a little bit of a funk. So
like I just did 6 days or something of Colorado fall color. And I could have stayed out an extra day, which would have meant I came home this morning. But I knew that I needed like a day to just decompress and unpack and, So, yeah, I totally agree. Like building in that extra kind of tarmac time to just get back into the swing of things is a great idea, if you can.
Right. And I don't have to even I can do things. I just don't want to have things that I've fully committed to on my schedule. So I have it free. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So, Peter, I forget how you say your last name. Peter Koskun. Did I say it right?
Sure.
Yeah,
I think it's
great.
Peter Koskun.
I did.
Yeah.
Koskun. Okay, well, Peter, we love your work. But he says, in those 35 days, were there moments when you felt pressured to complete a stretch of trail and abandoned the thought of doing photography, or simply just soaking in a moment to yourself to enjoy finishing that stretch? So answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already talked a little bit about this, but there's definitely sections of trail that I knew I would have to blaze through in order to make my schedule. The way I made that work is like, okay, when I get to that place, that's going to be cool because I'll have a bed and I'll have a restaurant I can go eat at, and I can get ice cream and I can drink a beer, and like that'll be a nice place to energize and take a shower, like looking forward to things that you can enjoy at those places. So that helped me not really care about photography. But like I said, along those days, I still took photos. It wasn't that hard to find something interesting to photograph along the way. So I think that answers the question.
I think so too. I think we asked this. So some of them, as we're talking, they're getting answered. So I'm just pulling through here, right? So there's a question about what were your expectations and were those met? I can't think you didn't have a lot, other than like you had.
We talked about the photography side of things.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean,
do you want me to ask it then? Let me ask it.
Sure.
Okay, hang on. What were your expectations going into this experience, and were those expectations met? And mentally, how did this experience change you from start to finish? There you go.
Okay. Well, I definitely had expectations that it was going to be physically challenging. Mm-hmm. I had expectations that the experience itself would be transformative in a way, like, just being able to say I did it, like that. Having that accomplishment, that feather in the cap. I'm very achievement driven as a person, so having something that big to focus my energy on was exciting because it's tangible. It's like when you're done, right? You finish. Whereas like there's a lot of things in photography, it's hard to put that tangible accomplishment piece to it. It's like, oh, I made a good photograph, but what else, right? So it was something to look forward to in that way. And then what was the second part? I'm sorry.
How did it change you from start to finish?
Oh, I don't think I've talked much about this yet, but I went into this whole experience with the goal of recording a video every single day, which I have mentioned, but the intention of the video is twofold. One was to kind of recap what I did that day, share my thoughts on the experience. And then the second was throughout that day, hopefully, I will have come away with something interesting from a philosophical perspective, a psychological perspective, something relating to relationships or life in general that would be something I could share and talk about on video, with the added goal of maybe all of that stuff that I come up with while hiking gets turned into a book of some kind. And so I do have that goal still. I'd like to do that. I need to get pen to paper and write a few essays to see if it's any good yet,
Any teeth to it. Mm-hmm.
But I kind of got that idea while I was doing my podcast with Sean Tucker. He talked about, getting his best ideas when he's by himself. And I thought to myself, man, I'm going to be by myself for 35 days. I hopefully could come up with some interesting stuff. So that's kind of how I got that idea, was just by talking to Sean Tucker on my podcast.
Shout out to Sean Tucker for the inspiration. So in that same vein, how has the experience influenced your perspective on your life now and your other goals?
Well, one of my biggest takeaways, and I've found it really hard to change my behavior so far, but I'm like actively trying. So I want to be a little bit more intentional and appreciative of the people in my life. So like reaching out to friends more often, spending time with my wife and son more often, planning things ahead with people instead of like, maybe we'll hang out someday. Like I want to get more intentional with my relationships and the quality of those relationships. So that's something that I definitely walked away from the experience thinking about.
Yeah, I don't even think you're alone in that, because I have a lot of those same kind of thoughts when I'm just taking a 3-mile walk near my house,
Right. Now do it for 35 days.
Right.
You're like, wow, I really miss all my friends right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What was your most profound insight, or was that it? Like, was that, did you have any like big epiphanies, or was that kind of the same thread?
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. I definitely reinforced in me that we're so often focused on the wrong things in life. We're focused on how much money am I going to make, or I want to get that new car, or, material things, possessions. And it really hit home for me, like, really the things that matter in life are how we feel about ourselves, what are our relationships, what the quality of our physical health, the quality of our mental health. Those are the things that we should be investing in and spending the time caring about. But it's so strange that it's just not. And it's, for whatever reason, the modern life pulls us back into that way of thinking. And so I'm constantly having to remind myself, focus on this other stuff, not the stuff you said in 35 days of hiking that doesn't matter, So it's just funny that, like, I made those realizations, but having them stick is taking time. Like, I need more neuroplasticity. Maybe I need to do some mushrooms or something. I don't know.
35 days on mushrooms. I see the book.
There you go. No, I don't know.
Oh, gosh. Well, I do think it's important. I think there's so much about life that we're constantly, if we're doing this work, we're constantly working on how to improve our lives and how to have more balance and really make it all enjoyable. And it's not just all about photography or creative work, right? There's this whole other part that contributes to having a full life. So figuring out how to make all those parts fit together.
For sure.
Yeah. It sounds like you've changed a little bit. Do you miss the person you used to be before the trip started?
I don't think I've changed that much.
Come on.
I just have a little bit, like 1% more wisdom or something. I don't know.
Don't you miss those 20 pounds?
No, I definitely don't.
All right. All right. I love this question. Okay. Lori Hibbett says, time alone in the mountains is a humbling experience. We are all pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I'm sure you've witnessed that, Matt, and seeing, huge mountains and big landscapes. And now that you're back to the comforts of home, is there anything new you want to incorporate into your daily life to keep you grounded and to try to bring a simplicity into your life at home like you had on the trail?
Well, I would like to. I'd love to maybe have a workout routine in the mornings. I have this whole plan now that I want to bulk up a little bit. My upper body just gets stronger. It's just, coming home from 35 days of being gone, like there was all of these demands on my time from all directions, podcast, teaching workshops, my family, and so it's hard to carve that stuff out, and I just have to commit to it and do it. But I've found that to be really difficult to make. I have barely exercised since I got home. It's funny. I've done some hiking and stuff, but nothing like what I was doing every single day, right? Mostly because I don't know that that's sustainable, but having more of that time dedicated and set aside, I think is going to become more and more important if I want to achieve my goals. And I think that's another thing that this experience hit home for me. If I don't have a goal, I don't do anything. I have to have something that drives the behavior change. Otherwise, the behavior will stay the same.
I'm kind of in the same, but I like to have a little bit of downtime in between. I don't want to go from one to the other,
Right.
I think you're in that space right now.
I
just have a little downtime, getting caught up, getting back into the groove. And not to mention, you've started something completely new. You're now a full-time photographer, instructor, and
right.
So you're back, you're doing all this, a little bit of new things. And so figuring out all that is a process too.
For sure. Yep.
All right. Here's a question that I got last night. Maybe I'll ask it and you can guess who it's from.
Okay.
I know you're not particularly religious or spiritual, but maybe just not religious. I think we're all spiritual in a way.
Sure.
We all have to pay attention to what our soul is saying. So that's just my opinion. While on the trail, did you feel any sort of a oneness with or the presence of some sort of higher power?
No, I'm an atheist, so no, but definitely strengthened my appreciation for nature and how connected everything is and how we're connected to it. And, if you pull the thread on this one thing over here, it's going to have an impact over there. So definitely you make a lot of those connections on trail where you start to see like, oh, there was a fire here. How does that affect the other things that are growing here? So there's a lot of stuff like that happens. But no, nothing in terms of
maybe
religion.
Maybe a bigger connection with the oneness of nature? Like, I appreciate this even more now.
For sure.
I don't know.
I'll go with that.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Our friend Wayne Suggs asks, how do you look at the outside world differently now? He says, you spent 35 days in the real world. Like, think about this from Wayne. You spent 35 days in the real world to step back into what we think of society. And how has that changed you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a huge contrast between what we find important day to day when really all that matters is our survival versus when you get home and you have all the comforts of home. You have easy access to food, you have easy access to water, you have a roof over your head, all those things. It's interesting, in some ways you would think that having all of those needs easily met would free you to have more time or energy to focus on creativity or to philosophize, whatever. But what I've found is it's actually the opposite. When I'm in nature and I'm focused on survival and where my next meal is coming from, all of those things that are happening in the outside world, Israel, Ukraine, climate change, all the things we're constantly worried about, I didn't think about that stuff at all. I was focused on everything else, like philosophy and like the meaning of life and how do I have a more purposeful existence, and like that was really interesting for me to have that experience hit me that hard over the course of 35 days.
Yeah, so a shift maybe now, if you're looking at it now, where you are, maybe a shift even in your priorities, like what is really important, versus what just isn't.
Right. And I'm still in that space where it's hard to tease out what some of those things are because of all the noise that accompanies it, But yeah, definitely.
What day did you get back?
September 9th.
Okay, so it's been just a little over a month. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
6 weeks. 5 weeks. I don't know. Something like that.
That sounds right.
But I still think an experience like this takes a little while to digest and process, especially like you were saying how you probably write something about it. And I think that will help you synthesize some of your thoughts together. I know it does for me.
For sure.
We can't wait for that. All right. I love this question too.
Careful what you ask for.
Oh no, I'll read it. Okay. How do you think you will look back at this experience 35 years from now? So start with today and then look into the future. So 35 days experience, 35 years later. Wait. How old are you now?
44.
Okay. So 35. So you're 79. I think I did that math right.
So hopefully I'm still
alive. 79.
I feel so lucky to have been able to do it, like have the time to do it, have the financial stability to do it, have the support of my family to do it, friends that helped support me along the way. I had several friends who helped me with resupplies and, just checking in on me, and like that was really nice to have that. I had several friends hike with me along the way, which was really fun. Really just a really fond memory of something I got to experience, and some pride in like being able to pull that off, not only in terms of just doing it, but also being able to get myself into a situation where it could be possible to do it. So yeah, a lot of fondness and humbleness, humility, hopefully.
Yeah.
Probably
I love
probably
that you
wishing
said,
my legs were still in that good a shape, right?
right. That you could hike 7 miles with 1,500 feet in elevation gain. Oh my gosh.
Right.
I think what you said is important about being proud of yourself and recognizing that I don't think this is a braggy thing. I think it's important to recognize, that, hey, I did this awesome thing and I got myself in shape and I did all the planning for it and I had this amazing experience and I'm really proud of that. And I feel like that's where you are. And I love that about this moment because, you could be like, oh, it was no big deal, but it is a big deal. Like, that's why we're talking about it on your podcast, because it kind of is a big deal,
Yeah, it's so funny because, like, I had so many people like, oh my God, you're the man, you did that. My initial reaction is like, yeah, whatever. But you're right. We definitely should spend more time savoring the things that we're proud of, especially things that took a lot of effort, for sure. And I think we're especially hard on ourselves as creatives. We need to spend more time doing that.
Oh, I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have one last question, and then we're going to go into some advice for future hikers, and then
okay.
All the questions.
So we're going to go 3 hours. 3 hours then.
Yeah. No, this won't take that long. I know we've been talking for 2. I had said I can't. If we're less than 2 hours, that would be a miracle. I know. So when the book about this journey is, hang on. Blah. When the book about this journey is turned into a movie, so I guess you've written a book already about it.
Okay.
And it's turned into a movie. Who plays your part?
Wow.
This is a serious question.
I've had some people say that I look like David Cross. He's the guy from Arrested Development. Maybe he would probably need to lose a little weight, but maybe David Cross, because he's kind of funny and he's bald and I don't know, he has a beard. So there you go.
Okay, we buy it. All right, David Cross, pay attention. Book's coming. Book forthcoming.
Although by the time that happens, he'll be like 70 years old. So
dang it.
We'll have to cryogenically
he could just dye his
freeze him
beard. Don't they make actors look younger?
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, there'll be some sort of younger actor that will be up and coming. We'll be like, that one. So, all right. What would be the number one thing you would that you would tell someone wanting to hike the Colorado Trail to be prepared for? And by the way, I'm listening very intently because I'm going to do, 5 or 6 days? I'm going with Marie Livingston and a small group to the Drakensbergs in March. Yeah. So
good. That'll be fun.
So I'm paying attention to gear and things like that.
So, I mean, definitely I would recommend going on several smaller trips first to get yourself accustomed to using your equipment, especially if it's equipment you've never used before. Because you might find some things about it that don't work well or that you just need to be mindful of when you're using it. In the thru hiking world, that's called like a shakedown hike or whatever, but it's really important to do that because you'll start to realize things that you need to like tweak about your setup to make it more comfortable or lighter or whatever. Like maybe your backpack doesn't feel comfortable. Maybe you did a different backpack, whatever, right? So things like that are good. Definitely along those same lines of, doing smaller trips, it's really important to get to know what your physical and mental limitations are. Not only so that you can hopefully break through those and move well beyond those limitations, but also I can't tell you how many people I ran into like on day one where I did 28 miles, where they were like 6 miles in and that was their second day or third day. Like they were completely underprepared physically for this undertaking. But part of that's because they saw, I don't know, maybe this is going to sound mean, but they saw a movie about someone who thru-hiked and they thought it looked cool and it's going to be transformative, but they didn't actually realize it would be difficult. So, doing some physical training, but also getting out and doing a really hard backpack to see what your limitations are, I think would be helpful and important. Highly recommend understanding your dietary needs and your water intake needs. Everyone is different. If someone said you have to drink this much a day, they're wrong. Every single person's body is different. So that comes with experience and just doing it and getting out and doing it more and more and more. So yeah, do smaller trips and test things out, not only physically, mentally, but also just the gear.
All right. Thanks. I have tested a little bit out, but I need to do something else, maybe December. So if I'm an experienced backpacker, this is a question, but I feel like it also applies to me. This is from someone else. What would your advice be on how to work up to longer trips? I think you've already kind of explained that, like go test it out. But like, how do you go from like an overnight to maybe doing, 6 or 7 nights or 5 to 7 nights and then maybe even longer? Or can you do 5 to 7 nights and then just translate that into the longer trip?
I mean, a good way to do it is go somewhere that's maybe 3 or 4 miles that has other interesting locations that are 2 to 3 miles away from that. And then give yourself like 4 or 5 days, and you can set up a base camp, maybe do side trips. You don't have to be constantly changing campsites. That gives you more perspective in terms of getting used to sleeping there and using that equipment without having to pack it up every single night. So I just smaller trips with fewer consequences attached, I think, is a great way to get started. And then do something that's closer to the road that, if things don't work out, it's not hard to get home, things like that. So I recommend that.
All right. I got the perfect place.
Yeah, I got places like that all over Colorado that I go to all the time, especially if it's early season and I'm trying to get my legs back, okay, I got to get back into shape here. Like, let's just do like a little 2-night thing.
I don't have a lot of those places, but there's Lost Maple State Park, which has some really beautiful special maples in Texas, which is crazy for fall. I don't think I'm going to make it there quickly for fall because I'm going other places, but I can take the long way, like up, and then there's some elevation. You go to a high point, and then you come down, and I can backpack into it. And on the other direction, coming out, it's like 2 miles to the parking lot, so I could pretend like I'm far away. so it's something like that.
I can't remember where I heard this, but it was in regards to like personal training, and I think it's the best advice, especially as it relates to hiking and things like that. But the best thing you can do to prepare to backpack is to backpack. Like, just get out and do it in smaller increments until it feels really comfortable, and then build yourself up over time.
Okay.
I think it's kind of irresponsible to just go out and do a 25-day hike without having done it before, though. Like, that just seems... You could get lucky, but man, that seems like there's a lot can go wrong in that situation.
Yeah, I fully agree, because you don't know. You just don't know what you don't know yet. That's the problem.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So 2 more questions. Are you ready? They're
I'm ready.
Easy. Throwing you some quickies. Other than running short on food resulting in cannibalism, are there any other cases where your plans didn't work out? I just wanted to ask that. I feel like all your plans, everything kind of worked out. I mean, any lessons learned, like did you ever run short on food?
No, I always had too much food. Always. Which is...
Really?
People are like, well, how did you lose weight? Well, it's because you can only eat so much food. And the reason why I had extra food is because I usually had about an extra day or 2 of food in case I had bad weather, or in case I was feeling bad and couldn't hike as long. But I always had extra food, which sucked because, you're at the end of you're getting a resupply and you still have 2 days of food. So, but you'd rather have too much food than not enough.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting balance, I think, to have. You don't want too much, right? But you don't want to carry. You don't want to carry it either.
Yeah, it sucks. Like my first resupply in Breckenridge, I don't know why I did it this way. It was just because where the mountains are situated. But my very first extra credit project was I wanted to climb these mountains that are right off trail called Peak 6, Peak 7, Peak 8. And they're all in a line, but it's off trail. and then you have to down climb the last mountain to get back to the trail further up. And I had 7 days of food on my back when I did all 3 of those. It was really hard. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so heavy. I just don't recommend that.
Matt, you're like a glutton for punishment, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, it was rough. Ugh.
Well, one last thing. I'll be interested to know how many total extra. I mean, I know you said you did 30 peaks, but I feel like you did more like extra credit projects, you know. So I'll be curious to figure out, like, if you figured out how many extra credit projects you did.
Well, part of that trail name comes from the fact that I was literally the only other person I saw on the entire trail that had a camera and tripod,
All the
recording
things.
videos, you know, like most people are like, you have a camera? You know, like, are you stupid? You know? So that's, I mean, just having the extra weight on such a big trip is extra credit alone.
There you
know?
go.
But yeah, I didn't really,
Extra
I mean,
credit
other
all
than the
time.
mountain climbs, I didn't do, I mean, I did some side things, but it was like to climb mountains or to, yeah, but it wasn't, it was always to climb mountains, always. Or, not
Exactly.
always, or to get to a really cool photography spot.
As we do.
Yeah.
Matt, would you do it again?
I would probably, only if it was like something my son wanted to do or a really close friend. But just on my own, I don't think I would be like, I'm going to go do that again. I would do another trail again. Or a different trail. I would, you know, maybe do part of the John Muir Trail in California, or maybe do the Long Trail, which is the whole state of Vermont. That looks kind of interesting. Or like the Arizona Trail, stuff like that. But I don't think I would repeat the whole Colorado Trail. I already did it.
You did it.
And
You
I'm
already did it.
achievement based, man. I'll do something new.
Time to do something new.
Yeah.
Take a break first, though.
Yeah.
That's it. This has been really fun. I enjoyed hearing all about even the prep, even the trail bidet. I just
telling you,
enjoyed
it's
hearing.
awesome.
I know. I'm gonna look it up now, but I really enjoyed hearing about all
practice
of
in
it.
your
What?
you can practice in the shower.
Okay, I will. No visualizations allowed right now.
Hey man, it's like that book my son had when he was a kid. Everybody poops.
Hey, I have a thing that, this is maybe TMI for some of y'all, but I have a little thing that allows me to stand up to pee. And it's pretty discreet. And so I bought it because when I'm out in the desert, if I'm hiking, it's just easier. You know what I
Totally.
mean? If I can be out in the middle of a playa in Death Valley and pee and no one even knows it's happening. So anyway,
why not?
cheers to amazing inventions by people who, know that this is, there needs to be solutions. So,
Yeah. Well, so
and I
Brie,
tell all my friends about it.
so Brie, I'm super thankful that you could host this podcast and we could switch roles once here. One of the reasons why I thought you would be a great person to do this is because you've also got your own podcast now. You've actually got 2 podcasts.
I
but
do.
You're doing this new one that you're doing that it's more interview based, and maybe you can take a minute here to tell everyone about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, this one was kind of an interview, but also I liked hearing the stories. And I just feel like, especially in our world where, there's been all the talk about gear. It's all, there's a lot of technology out there. And we just want to hear the stories now. And that's how I'm feeling is I want to hear the stories, and I want to hear what happens when the camera is, maybe we're photographing, but just beyond the photograph, right? And so the podcast is called Wild Women in Photography, and truly it's about women who are having amazing experiences and behind the lens, and then they come on and they tell their stories. And so we've had I just chatted with Erin Bobnick the other day. I recorded with Taylor Stone. Hers comes out tomorrow. This will come out later. So by the time this podcast goes out, you'll be able to go listen to that. Shanda Aiken, a Colorado photographer. So, and all of these women have so many interesting stories that we don't even know about. And that's what I want to bring to everybody. And also, it's women in photography. And I think this is a space where we can now really like shine and show what we're doing. And that's really fun for me. So this has been like a really amazing project, and I'm really enjoying the project. And I don't know, I just thought of it one day. And so just like you,
that's
whatever it takes, it's happening.
I was like, let's go. Let's do it.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, why did my brain think this up? Can I even do a second podcast? And so, but I have a really amazing small group of women that I have a little texting group with these women. And I said, hey, I thought of a new thing and it's crazy. And they're like, tell us all about it. And when I said, they were like, you have to do this. We need this. The world needs this. And so I've gotten a lot of encouragement from them and a lot of people that I've talked to. So anyway, it's been fun. So yeah, thanks for letting me tell about it.
Yeah, of course. And a podcast that, you don't have commercial motives, it's just like, I think this will be fun if it's a passion project. I think all of that commercial success will follow if you do it from the heart. So I'm happy to hear you doing it. So keep up the good work.
Thanks. It's been really fun to support women and their creativity and, anything they have going on. So it's fun.
Awesome.
And this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we had some good questions, and I'm glad none of the surprise questions were too salacious. So.
No, they weren't.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. My hosting time is over. So I will hand the baton back to you for all the regular shows. I will say I do have a goal to do like a blog about gear and that kind of thing. I actually recorded a bunch of videos about the gear I was using. I'm hopefully going to get that out there in the world someday. I don't know when, but yeah, I've got a lot of things on my plate right now, but hopefully I'll get that out there soon.
You will. And gear, we always say gear isn't necessarily important, but I think you kind of told us from this conversation that being prepared with the gear is actually what allowed you to have such a comfortable time and
for sure.
Be able to be relaxed and really enjoy your experience, So,
although I will say this, so the girl I hiked with, she had kind of an older backpack, some older gear that wasn't super lightweight, and when I first saw her, I was like, oh man, that looks heavy. And I was like, well, how much is your pack weigh? And she's like, it's about 45 pounds. And I was like, wow. I'm like, you're at least 5 pounds heavier. And she's like, I know, I probably could shave about 5 pounds off. But then I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, yeah, you're just 5 pounds stronger. So I like that attitude too, And she finished.
There you go.
And she's stronger than me, I tell you that. Man, she was a badass.
There you go. So, another woman doing amazing things.
There you go.
I'm all about it.
All right, Brie. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. It was really fun.
Well, thank you to Brie for being such an awesome host this week. I can't thank you enough. I highly encourage y'all to check out her 2 podcasts, A Creative Affair and Wild Women in Photography. I'm really excited to see where Brie takes her shows. Also, Brie mentioned on the show that I created an awesome spreadsheet and tool to help me organize all of my photography gear for backpacking. If you'd like a copy of this spreadsheet to play with for yourself, check out the link in the show notes. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.